Thank you, Kurt. We'll start off with news from the region. Mexican police have found the bodies of 9 people hanging from a bridge and 7 more bodies hacked up and dumped on the road. The BBC reported that the massacre in the city of Uruapan is thought to be gang-related. A banner hanging from the bridge reportedly bore the initials of one of Mexico's most powerful drug cartels. Criminals have previously hung the bodies of their murdered victims in public to intimidate rival gangs. According to the BBC, the prosecutor said the gangs are fighting for territorial control over the production, distribution, and consumption of drugs. The bodies were found in 3 locations across the city where rival gangs are said to be battling for control of the drug trade. As violence has escalated, so too has the murder rate. Last year, a record 33,341 murder investigations were opened by Mexican authorities, Reuters news agency reported. The UN's human rights chief has criticized the latest U.S. sanctions against Venezuela, saying they would intensify the suffering of millions. According to the BBC, Michelle Bachelet, a former president of Chile, said the sanctions were extremely broad and would hit the most vulnerable sections of society. The unilateral measures freeze all Venezuelan government assets in the U.S. and ban commercial transactions. They are aimed at piling pressure on President Nicolas Maduro to step down. The U.S. is one of more than 50 nations that do not recognize Mr. Maduro as Venezuela's legitimate president. Ms. Bachelet has raised concern about the consequences of previous U.S. sanctions against Venezuela. She has also criticized Mr. Maduro's government, mainly over its ill treatment of opponents. In March, she singled out Venezuela as an example of how violations of civil and political rights can accentuate inequality and worsening economic conditions. Trinidad and Tobago's minister in the Ministry of Public Administration and Communications, Marlene McDonald, spent Thursday night at the St. Joseph police station, and police continued their line of questioning Friday. McDonald's attorney, Pamela Elder, senior counsel, told reporters that she has been cooperating with the police officers, but so far no charges have been laid. Elder is representing both McDonald and her husband, but was only speaking on behalf of McDonald. McDonald is a cabinet minister, and she is being investigated on the allegation of misappropriation of public funds. Internationally, U.S. President Donald Trump says serious discussions are taking place between congressional leaders on meaningful background checks for gun owners following 2 mass shootings. On Twitter, Mr. Trump also said he had spoken to the gun lobby group, the National Rifle Association, NRA, so their views can be represented and respected. The BBC reported that the NRA opposes extensive background checks. Democrats want the Senate to be recalled from recess to enact immediate legislation on gun control. Mr. Trump, who did not specify which steps he would support, weighed in after days of disagreement on how the U.S. should respond to its latest mass shootings. As he prepared to leave the White House on a trip to New York, he said there is need for intelligent background checks. There have been more than 250 mass shootings in the U.S. this year. Last weekend, mass shootings in Dayton, Ohio and El Paso, Texas left more than 30 people dead. A security lockdown in Indian-administered Kashmir remains largely in place, although residents have been allowed to attend Friday prayers in some local mosques. However, the main mosque is closed and tight restrictions continue, the BBC reported. Thousands of troops are still patrolling the streets 4 days after the Indian government revoked the Muslim-majority state's autonomy. The area has been under a virtual communications blackout since Sunday. Some people have reported that they are now able to access the internet, and mobile phone signals appear to be active in some parts of Srinagar, the main city in Indian-administered Kashmir, but connectivity is yet to be fully restored. However, the BBC reported that a curfew imposed on Monday remains in place. Prime Minister of India Narendra Modi has promised Kashmiris that they will be able to celebrate the religious holiday of Eid al-Adha on Sunday. China has ordered the Hong Kong-based airline Cathay Pacific to suspend any staff who support pro-democracy protests in the territory. Beijing's demand coincided with a peaceful rally at Hong Kong's airport, where thousands occupied the terminal, the BBC reported. The airline also faced pressure online after China's state-run press fueled a boycott hashtag, which trended on Chinese social media. Hong Kong has seen weeks of protests over China's control control of the territory. The protests began about 9 weeks ago over a proposed extradition bill between Hong Kong and mainland China and evolved into demands for greater freedoms. Hong Kong is part of China, but its citizens have more autonomy than those on the mainland. It has a free press and judicial independence under the so-called one country, two systems approach. And that brings us to the end of regional and international headlines. Back to you, Kurt.